Bonjour, good afternoon, and welcome to WASA Distance Education. My name is Greg Weaver, and this is ENG3C, Grade 11, College Prep English. I'd like to welcome everyone listening across North today at home, your learning center, or on Bell Express 2. To call and join our class, you can call 1-800-465-7144 or 737-4017 or 2983 in the Sioux Lookout, Lac Seul, or Dryden areas. I'd like to welcome everyone back to class today. Hope everyone had a good night last night. We are going to pick up where we left off. We're going to try and get through as much of lesson 14 as we can today. We're going to spend all of the day looking at essay and paragraph structure today. And we're going to be going through that and looking at how do you actually set up an essay and how do you build that support. If we get a chance, we will start in looking at the key questions at the end of this, but I don't expect or plan to get there today. If we do get to key question 17, I'll be happy, but we'll probably get to that tomorrow. A quick reminder that next week is Easter, so WASA will be closed next Monday, as well, next Friday, as well as the following Monday for the Easter holiday. If you do have any questions or work to hand in, let me know. Also, when we come back after Easter, that is our last week of classes. If you think you need a bit more time to get stuff done, let me know. We can set up an extension. If you think you're just too far behind, you can't get it done, you can always transfer into the IL section of this course, and that will allow you an extra 9 weeks until the 12th of June to complete the course. So what we're doing today, we're going to pick up where we left off. We're starting off looking at page 33. Looking at this outline for an essay. So quick review. We started yesterday looking at basic essay structure. Now this graphic organizer is very basic. It gives you how you do it and what to look for and how to create it. It doesn't have everything. Your own essay may look a bit different. This is just a guide to get you started. So this outline has an introductory paragraph, 3 body paragraphs, and then your conclusion. So the very beginning, your introductory paragraph, the first thing you have is your hook. Something that's going to make your reader want to keep reading your essay. For that, you want to have something fairly creative and something that's going to, right off the bat, in the first 2 sentences, catch your reader's attention. If it doesn't, they may just skip it over, and if they had a choice of them to read, they won't even come close to it and come back to it, and you've lost your chance there. Once you have your hook done, you want to look at the 3 main points that you are going to be examining or covering in your essay. And those main points are 1, 2, and 3. So what are your evidence? And you have your thesis. Some models have your thesis before your 3 points, others have it after. Choice is up to you. But your thesis is, what are you arguing? You have these 3 points, perfect. What's the point? What do you want to do with them? So once you have all of those 3 main points become your 3 body paragraphs. So your first body paragraph is your first main point. So you want to have an introductory sentence. You want to explain and talk about what's going on with that. After that, you want to have 3 points or 3 proofs to explain or elaborate on those points. So you have your first point, and then the proof or the example the quote, the analysis, something that proves that point. And you have your second point, your point two, and then the proof. How you can justify or prove that exists. And then your third point, and the proof that goes along with that. Then you have your concluding sentence. Now, your concluding sentence kind of summarizes everything that was going on in that paragraph, sums it up, and ties everything back into your introductory sentence and the first point from your thesis. Everything ties back in together. That's a big thing when you write an essay. A good essay has all the points and all the examples tying back in to clearly prove the point that they're writing about. Your second and third body paragraphs follow the exact same format. And with that, you have your introductory sentence, your 3 points, and your 3 proofs, followed by your concluding sentence. Once you have all of that, you have your concluding paragraph. Now, your concluding paragraph, you want to restate your thesis, but you want to do it using different words. So instead of saying or just copying out the exact same sentence that you had in your introduction, you want to do it a bit differently. So you want to have that done. Using different words so it doesn't sound like you just copied it and rewrote it. Then you want to restate those 3 points that you had in your introduction and the 3 main, which are the same 3 points that you had in your 3 body paragraphs. You want to repeat those and restate those in your conclusion, just to remind your reader exactly what you were looking at. And then you want to end with it says there a general concluding statement. That's something just to wrap up everything you're saying, everything you are writing about. How does that all tie together? What does it do? How does it tie together? And you also want to try and either really inspire your reader with what you're saying, or you kind of challenge them to think about what you wrote about, depending on what style of essay you're writing. Is it an information essay? Is it a persuasive essay? Is it an argumentative essay? Is it an expository essay? What kind of essay are you writing? So that was just a little bit, there was a bit more detail all through the next parts. We'll read this over, but it's very similar to what I just talked about. We have the introductory paragraph as the first paragraph the reader looks at and needs therefore to hook your reader to inspire their interest in your topic. The first sentence, because this pressure falls upon it the most, is often the hardest sentence to write in the entire essay. You may want to leave it to the very last so you know exactly what you discussed in the body of your essay, because even what you have in your outline will change when you actually do your good copy and your rough draft. So some possible techniques you would use to hook your reader include a rhetorical question. What's an answer that people already know the answers to, but it makes them think about it? Such comments that could be, how would you feel if everything you had ever worked for was taken away merely because you refused to marry? Well, how would you feel if everything you say that, then how would you feel? The author and the writer already knows that you would feel very upset and very angry. And they go on to explain the context. As strange as it may sound, this is exactly what happened to Roman women if they refused or were unable to marry by their 25th birthdays. That'll make your readers stop and think about how that would feel, and that could lead into your essay on the marriage practice of Romans. Your essay doesn't depend on the reader actually generating a response, but we'll deal with how Roman women felt about it. Another way is there's an anecdote, and this exact same topic, but worded differently, a different one. So it says, you're about to turn 25. To this point in your life, you've been relatively carefree. Your father died when you were 16. You've received an inheritance from the estate. You've been able to make your own decisions with what to spend the money on, what slaves to buy, and even where to live in Rome itself for the country. But the day you turn 25, you're still not married. All those rights and privileges and wealth would take away from you. All because you've not taken upon yourself the role of wife. Now, this sort of anecdote or story contains basically the same information as the rhetorical question, but allows you to experiment with little narrative writing that otherwise shouldn't be included in a literary essay. Again, the anecdote tells your reader that you will deal with the rights of unmarried women in Rome. Different words, different phrasing, exact same content, exact same topic that you were introducing, just done in a different way. Three says you have a quote from an external source. So this could be a quote that you think is really interesting or really sums up or can help to introduce what topic you're going to be looking at. It allows you to bring in someone else's ideas. So it's a good way to kind of prove your opinion if you're doing some kind of controversial essay or any kind of argumentative essay. So, an example would be an expert on the Roman woman, Karen Faulkner, states that the real shame of the plight of the unmarried Roman woman that she's had to come to know and love freedom by her 20th birthday, only to have that freedom ripped away from her. And the last is the definition. This is a simple way to begin an essay. It's probably the easiest way to do it, but not always the most effective. It's particularly, only it can be effective is if the essay concerns a confusing or complex topic like love. You may find it convenient to define your understanding of the concept before going further analysis of how the topic is developed in your novel or in your essay. So more important than this hook even is the thesis. The thesis is the opinion that you are going to prove in the essay. A thesis must be an opinion statement, not a fact. It should contain the name of the literary text and must be found at the end of the introductory paragraph. For this first essay you'll be writing, your thesis will be your thematic statement, which we looked at earlier. So each body paragraph contains all the elements of the standalone paragraphs that you've been writing throughout this course. Each body paragraph will be analyze one aspect of your thesis. Your introductory sentence explains what the aspect of the paragraph will be exploring. The point proof structure will be followed in the body of the paragraph. Keep in mind that one or two of your proofs in each paragraph must be probably formatted quotations. Each concluding sentence will not only remind the reader of what the paragraph is examining, but also make a direct connection to the thesis. And then, for example, if your essay is examining our thematic statement on fear, you must have divided paragraphs into the following: fear of others, fear of yourself, fear of the unknown. So, general example will be 1 point proof about the fear of others. As the active example, Skelter's example will be placed in the fear of the unknown paragraph, since we're all general change and how it should affect. Clean sentence of the fear of others might state clearly characters do not have much fear from people around them as they thought. Even with those examples we found, you would need to find more examples. You need 3 point or proofs for each paragraph for a total of at least 9. Some essays have 4, 5, even 6 different proofs. You can have as many as you need to, but the minimum you have to have is 3. After all those, you get to your concluding paragraph. Now, the concluding paragraph has the opposite structure as the introductory paragraph. First, you need to restate your thesis using different wording from the wording you used in the introductory paragraph. Then you review your 3 main points in order they appear both the intro and the actual body of the essay. And lastly, you need to leave the reader with the understanding of what you have proven this essay is important. Easiest way to do this is in a literary essay to look for example from the real life that also proves your point and leave that idea with your reader. For example, going back to our thematic statement on fear, we might end our essay by saying in reality, today's busy society, people do not usually have this time to sit back and reflect on whether or not an experience was truly as bad as they feared it would be. Perhaps if everyone tried to do this more often, society would become a more friendly, outgoing environment again. Next, you have the style of a literary essay. So as mentioned before, a literary essay must be formal in style. This means that you cannot use the first person using I or we, except if you're using a direct quote from the novel. You also cannot use the second person. It's you or your, except in direct quotes from the novel or in your hook or your introduction if you do an anecdote or how would you feel. So make a note of that. So I'm going to change that next time the course is taught. Just made it to myself there. Or use contractions. I don't. Unless written do not. Except, once again, in direct quotes from the novel. If you're doing a direct quote, you can copy wrong spelling, wrong grammar, whatever it is, as long as it's a direct quote from the novel. If it's not, everything has to be correct grammar, no contractions, and no slang. So, kids should be children unless it's being done in a quote from the novel, or sometimes in your hook, depending on how that works, how you phrase it. And there should be absolutely no swear words whatsoever. No slang, no swear words. That is a hard thing for some people to do, especially phrases like LOL, G2G, TTYL. Both those have entered common English, and they're used in most informal communication between friends or family. It cannot be used in formal writing. And the reason why I say that is every year teachers here at WASA, as well as my friends who are teachers in other schools, both here in Silicon and in other schools, come across students writing LOL, G2G, and using the letter U in place of YOU. That's fine for informal language. For formal writing, that is not allowed or supported. As well as these style no-nos, you need to ensure that every time you refer to the title of the novel, either underline it or put in italics, those slanted writing. If you're typing it, it looks right like this. It's easy to do if you're typing. It's this one up here. If you're doing this by hand, the easiest way is to underline it in order for that to occur. As well, your essay needs to be double-spaced to provide room for self-editing as well as teacher comments. If you're doing it by hand, double-space the whole thing, your good copy and your rough copy. If you are doing it on a computer, you can do it near about 1.5 spacing on a computer. And you also need all quotes must be properly inserted, which we looked at already in the last lesson, including page references and author's name in brackets after the quote itself. You also will need a works cited, which we'll talk about tomorrow. That goes at the very end of your essay after your conclusion on a separate sheet of paper. We looked at that when we looked at the quote insertion as well. You will need to carefully edit your rough copy to ensure that your essay follows formal style guidelines all throughout it. And that leads us into our last support question for this lesson. And for this, you want to answer the following questions on a separate piece of paper to ensure that you understand the essay format. I think, why is the first sentence in an essay important? And that's, so let's look at the hook and all that. Why is that important? Don't just copy it from the course. Try and think about that on your own to come up with a really clear sentence or two. So think about that. Number 2 says, name 2 techniques you could use to start an essay. We looked at all of those. They include rhetorical questions, anecdotes, quotes, or definitions. There's also other ones out there. Those are just the 4 big ones. Now, what 2 things does a concluding sentence of each body paragraph have to accomplish? What do they have to have in it? Well, as we talked about, you want to have them summarize what you talked about in the first place, what's going on, and you also want to connect all that back to your thesis. Now, that's a big challenge that most students have, both in this course and in other courses, and even at other schools, having talked to friends who teach English at other schools, is students do a good job of summarizing and summing up everything, but they can't tie that back to the thesis. So they talk about what's going on, summarizing it, but how does that really relate back to the thesis? You want to make it clear for your reader. You always want to assume that whoever is reading your essay knows nothing of your topic and doesn't go back and reread it. So you have to lay out everything really clearly and efficiently for that reader. In the words of one of my former teachers when I was in high school, you have to assume that your reader is dumb and doesn't know anything. That is what I was taught when I was in high school. Assume that your reader is dumb. And then finally, name 2 ways that you could make your essay informal and therefore unacceptable. We just looked at that. There's a lot there. Choose 2 ways and try and put, when you do this on your own, try and put this into your own words. That's the biggest thing. No, it's just answer the back of them. I didn't read them, but they're back there on page 54. I didn't read them out loud. They're on page 54, though. And that leads us into our key question 17, which we're going to kind of read through and look at today, and we will work on and finish up tomorrow. So looking at key question 17, this says it's time to pull all your skills and knowledge together into an essay analyzing one main topic, which is discrimination. We looked at this back in Unit 1, talked about it a bit in Unit 2, looked at more in lessons 11, 12, and 13. Now we're going to finally stop looking at it, sum everything up, and then we're done with discrimination for the most part. It's a bit more in lesson 15, but that's pretty much, after this lesson, we're done, or this unit, we're done with it. So think about everything you learned. You're going to write a properly formatted, formal 5-paragraph essay examining what Harper Lee's message was about discrimination. So we're going to work through some of these steps tomorrow. We won't have time today. So you need to, don't forget the following 3 steps discussed at the beginning of this lesson. We'll go back and look at that later on tomorrow. Then you need to fill in the essay plan on page 32 to ensure you have enough evidence. Then you're going to do your rough draft. And once you're with the layout of it, your rough draft can be done either on computer or by hand. I'll show you tomorrow how you can set up on a computer. And then you have to edit it to make sure your thoughts are correct, everything ties together, and your use of spelling and punctuation is correct. You also want to edit your rough copy. There's an editing checklist following on the support questions. And we'll go over that as well. When you want to create a final copy of your essay, this final copy must be typed and double-spaced. One thing I do recommend to students, if they're having a hard time, a lot of students do a great thesis and do really good with their body paragraphs, but they have a very hard time writing their conclusion. Even though they have the outline done, they struggle with that. So what I have recommended to some students is just do the point from outline of conclusion when you do, as you do your rough draft. If you can't think of it or get something down, you can always rewrite it and redo it when you do your editing. Just because you wrote it down in your good copy, it goes for your thesis, your body paragraphs, and your conclusion. Just because you wrote that down in your rough draft doesn't mean that you have to stick with those words or even some of those thoughts when you do your good copy. You can always change, modify, and move it around as needed. And then once all that's done, you do your final copy. You must hand in all stages of the writing process when you do this. That means you have to hand in your outline, which we looked at on page 33. Your rough draft, either do it by hand or on a computer. You can do your rough draft on a computer. I'll show you more about that tomorrow, and how you can save it and make it so you can do it that way. And your good copy, which must be typed. Whether you do it by hand or on a computer as a rough draft, your good copy must be typed. It must be at least 1.5 spacing, if not double spaced, and it has to be works cited as well. And once all that's done, you evaluate using the rubric that's on the next page. It says it's worth 20 marks, but those I am not very free giving it those marks. You have to earn the marks for this. Now, there's levels 1, 2, 3, 4 in the rubric, looking at how well do you follow the essay structure, how well do you develop the argument, how well do you find the right points to help prove what you're doing, how well do you use effective writing. So do you use the writing process, the outline, the rough draft? Can I see changes from your rough draft to your good draft? Do I see how things have changed and been modified, or do the exact same thing all the time? How well is your spelling and your grammar? How does it flow? That's all mechanics. And then finally, use the formal style conventions. So do you have formal language? Do you have properly cited quotations? Do you have proper quotation insertions? Do you have slang? Or is everything correct? Think of everything we looked at on page 36. That's what I look at in that part of the rubric. And then after that, we get into lesson 15. We'll get to that. We won't get to that until maybe the end of class tomorrow or next Monday. But I want to show you the formal editing checklist. You can find this on page 56. And that is in the suggested answers. And it says, this is the following criteria for a formal essay. If your essay meets this criteria, put a check mark next to it. If not, you don't make the changes. You don't have to hand this in, but I want you to look through this and see that you have these things. So is it double spaced? Rough and good copies. Is there no first person? I, we, us, or our except in direct quotes? Is there no second person present except in direct quotes or in your hook? Some of your anecdotals may have that. How would you feel? Or imagine you were doing this. That's fine for your hook. There's no contractions. Didn't, couldn't, wouldn't, don't, won't, words like that. Any other contractions. Your, while you apostrophe re should be you are. There's no spelling errors or typos. Typos are a big thing. We'll look about spell check and the downfall of spell check afterwards. Tomorrow we'll look at traditional words. First, second, thirdly, likewise, also, between, also, in case of. On the other hand, all those are transitions. Those are back in back in Unit 1. We look at transitions. We can review those as well tomorrow. There's no more than two. You have at least one quote in each body paragraph, but no more than two. The quotes are punctuated properly, and you have proper commas, and capitals, appropriate punctuation, periods, question marks are there. There should be no exclamation marks unless you're in direct quotes, in which case anything goes in a direct quote. Contractions, spelling mistakes, as long as they're there and from the original source itself. Anything in a quotation mark, you can have anything go as long as it's in the quotation mark because you're copying it directly from the source. And that's where we'll end for today. We'll look at actually doing this process tomorrow, and we'll go with a bit more detail with that as well. So thanks everyone for joining me today. I'll talk to you about